Hi, I'm Trish.
And I'm Brandy.
And you're listening to episode 30 of
Connected Conversations. This is your go-to space where international teachers, leaders, and families like us get together for real talk, practical insights, and tools to thrive abroad in the international schools world.
Between us, Brandy and I have nearly 40 years of international teaching experience across 4 continents and more than a dozen countries.
Which means that we've seen a lot of exciting parts of moving abroad, new cultures, new schools, new communities.
And we've also seen the logistical side of international life, visas, shipping containers, paperwork, and sometimes moving pets across the world.
That's right. In our last episode, we talked about the realities of relocating pets internationally, from microchips and vaccinations to airline logistics, costs, and planning timelines.
And today we're continuing that conversation with someone who has truly lived this experience many times over.
Our guest today is an international educator and IB PYP Coordinator from New Zealand, who has spent more than 20 years working in international schools across the Middle East and Southeast Asia.
Mary Ann VanDeWeerd first became a great friend of mine in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I've learned so much from her, both as an educator and as just a beautiful human being along the way. And along her many journeys, the plight of local animals has always been really close to her heart. She's not only relocated her household across countries and continents many times, but in the last 5 years, she's recently moved with her growing fur baby family as well.
Mary Ann has definitely navigated the paperwork, the travel logistics, the weathered surprises that come with moving animals across borders.
And so today we're diving into her real story as part of our International Voices series to see what practical lessons and tips she has to share with someone who has been there and done that. She's someone who's been there and done that.
Exactly. So if you're considering relocating internationally with a pet, or maybe you're just curious what the process actually looks like behind the scenes, this conversation is definitely for you.
So, are you ready?
Let's get connected.
Okay, let's get connected. Mary Ann, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time and connecting with us from abroad. I'd like to start off this interview today by asking a little bit about your international journey. Where have you lived and where have you worked over these last 30 years? And how have pets been a part of those moves?
Okay, so I have been in international teaching since 2005, so 20 years. I have been my first job was in Istanbul, Turkey. I moved from there to Indonesia, from there to Sudan, from Sudan to Switzerland to New Zealand for a bit, and then from New Zealand to Thailand, and finally, presently from Thailand to Oman. So I'm presently in Oman. And within those countries, I moved a cat from Sudan to Switzerland to New Zealand, and just recently, that cat passed away. Just recently, about 4 years ago, I acquired a dog that I got to keep, the wonderful school dog, because we became very good friends. And so I moved Petal from Thailand to Oman. And as you know, Trish, there's a special little bond with Petal.
Absolutely. I got the pleasure of having Petal just before you for a year as the boarding dog. So we both know she's laying in her little bed right next to you right now. And I miss that girl. Definitely.
Wow, you've moved a lot of places. Oh my gosh. And that's a lot of pets and different pets to move from country to country. What was it like the very first time you moved a pet abroad? Was it difficult? Did you feel prepared, or was it a big learning curve?
I was in Sudan and I had said that I would take someone's cat. They had to leave suddenly. So I said that I would take the cat. So from Sudan to Switzerland. And it was really overwhelming when I started to do the research myself. And from Sudan to Switzerland, I did do it by myself, and I did manage to find someone at the airport who could help me, but it was quite a process, and it wasn't particularly easy in Sudan to get all the paperwork and the tests that need to be done. It was really overwhelming, to be honest. And when I was in Sudan, it was really interesting people have just this perspective that you can just turn up at the airport with your pets, and it just doesn't work like that.
Oh, wow.
So that was which was my initial thought, that you could just turn up. But I learned very quickly you can, and it takes time. It's the amount of time and how much you have to be prepared beforehand.
How long did it take you to get prepared for the Sudan to an EU placement?
So with it was I had no paperwork for the cat or anything. So we were starting from scratch with rabies vaccinations. And the thing that takes the longest is you have to have a rabies vaccine, and then you can't do the rabies test till 1 month later. And then generally they can't travel for 3 months. No, they can't. They can't travel for 3 months till after the rabies vaccination, rabies teacher test.
And can I ask, did she, or I'm assuming it's a girl cat. Was it a girl cat or a boy cat?
It was a girl, Bacardi.
Girl cat.
Yeah.
I assumed right. And did she fly as cargo under the plane, or did she fly with you in cabin?
So here's the difference between cargo. So there's three options that you can move an animal. So number one is in the cabin. So they're in the cabin. Okay. So whenever you've got an animal that can be in the cabin, that's called in the cabin. But when you have, the other two options are excess baggage, they go in the hold, or cargo, and they still go in the hold. So the difference will be, and everyone they say, if you can do excess baggage, they still go in the hold, but they come out to the carousel, and there's no customs, there's nothing like that. So then if you are in a country where they won't allow the animals to come in as excess baggage, you must put them through customs, and it's a very different experience and a lot more expensive.
And is that what you had to do from Thailand to Oman?
No, I was very lucky. From Thailand to Oman, I brought her excess baggage, so it's cheaper. She basically gets done per weight. They weigh everything, and with her crate, she's done per weight. And then so she still has to go in the hold, but she can come straight out. They bring her straight out to the carousel. She doesn't come around on the carousel, but she comes out on a really big trolley to the carousel.
Wow.
And then if they come through cargo, you have to go pick them up from customs. They go to customs. So
can you do it the same day? Can you pick it up the same day? Or
they can, but it takes a lot longer because they have to go through the customs process to come out. So there are whereas if they're on the cabin, I've never been in a plane where I've been allowed to take animals in the cabin on a flight. They've always had to go in the hold. Some animals, if it's a therapy dog or a companion dog, or you've got an animal that's a therapy or a companion, they are more likely to go in the cabin with special papers.
Sure.
And that's another type of something you get from your vet or from your psychologist to get extra paperwork there, right?
And then they have to be able to do certain things, like they have to be able to get your bag. They have to be able to perform things like get your bag, help you up the stairs, help you down the stairs. There's lots of things that they need to do to be able to come and go in the cabin as a therapy dog.
Okay.
Wow, you've seen a lot of different situations with your moves with pets, and you know so much.
Yes.
Yeah. So out of all of these different processes that you've had, what was the most stressful? We talked about what was the most time consuming. Was it the paperwork, the logistics, maybe the flight, or something different?
You know what's the most stressful part? So generally, mostly, you would get an agent. Like you have an agent to help you get the animal in for the import permit, and you have an agent to help you get animal out. Because usually an animal depending on the country, they need an export permit to leave the country, and they need an import permit to come into a country. The most stressful part is that you have to get that import permit, and you can't book the flight till usually 7 days. Sometimes you can't book the flight. You can't get the paperwork. Like in Oman, I couldn't book the flight for Oman till 7 days before. They wouldn't allow me, depending on the airlines. They wouldn't allow me 7 days before. I couldn't get her health certificate, which she needs for her export permit, till 10 days before. So I had 3 days because the import permit's only valid for 10 days, the health certificate. And so that timeline, depending on which country you're coming into, not all countries are like that. We are shipping some dogs out to Prague, actually.
Mhm.
Obviously, things are a little bit risky right now because the flight's being cancelled, but Qatar Airways is a little bit more relaxed and you can book them a month in advance. But certain airlines, that can be quite stressful depending when you're allowed to book them on. And Oman Airways was only 7 days before.
And is this information you just find on the place's website? Like, is there a whole big section of that, or?
You will find most of it online, but I think to really find out and know exactly what the input situational processes are, I would be contacting someone, usually a vet. I would be contacting a vet in the country. So that's what I did from Thailand because Oman was a little bit more complicated. The first thing I did was I got into a Facebook pet page. Is there anyone that I can contact? I was given the vet and they were amazing with helping me.
Oh, it pays to have a connected network. That's what we're talking about here.
One of your questions was, did I have anything where it went wrong?
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you next. What happened?
Yes. So that was with Petal. I got all her paperwork done. And Oman, again, every country has different rules. And I'd never seen this rule before. And I don't know if it's in any other country. After she had her rabies test, I gave her 1 month later her annual rabies booster, and that nullified it. According to Oman, that nullified her rabies test, which meant she couldn't travel with me. So I had to keep her in Thailand for 3 months because I had to do another rabies test. I had to wait 1 month after the rabies test vaccine because you can't do a rabies test. You have to wait a month after a vaccine. And then it's 3 months that she can fly after the rabies test after the blood is drawn. So that's went wrong. So I left at the end of July or the beginning of July, and I couldn't leave Petal. Petal had to stay in Thailand and didn't come till October. So read every tiny little piece of writing because
and if I'm understanding right, you couldn't book that flight till 7 days before. So you had waited all summer to book that flight, and then am I right that you showed up to the airport, or how far ahead did you find out?
So we were planning. I hadn't booked her on the flight because we were about to book her 7 days before at the end. And I found out at the beginning of July, as soon as I sent the paperwork, and they saw that I had vaccinated her on June the 18th. 2 weeks later, they wrote back and said, you have to do this again because you've vaccinated her. It's the weirdest situation with Oman. So, I hadn't booked her on the flight because it wasn't the 7 days before.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty, and that's very stressful when you're about to leave in 2.5 weeks yourself, or 3 weeks. And now you've got a dog that can't go. So read the paperwork and the fine print really carefully.
Wow.
And I can imagine that added to your costs because you either had to board her somewhere. I think I know a family who might have taken her in for a little bit.
Yeah, because what happened then, the rabies tests are not cheap. And I had to redo the rabies test.
Wow.
We're talking a lot about these different timelines. Mm-hmm. I know you've just thrown out the 3 month mark after already giving her the 1 month rabies test and checkup. How far in advance, that you're getting hired somewhere, let's say November before the next school year, how far in advance would you advise someone to start planning their move if they have a pet?
6 months before, easily 6 months. No, I wouldn't do anything less than 6 months. No less than 6 months. If you knew you were leaving in June or July, then you would be starting in January. You would be in touch with a vet and an agent in January because every country is different. Generally, just about every single country will expect you to have a microchip. Every single country will expect a rabies test. Every single country will expect that you've got your rabies vaccinations up to date and other certain vaccinations up to date. And then if you're looking at countries like New Zealand and Australia to import animals, it's even more confusing. So some countries are a little bit more relaxed than others, but generally all countries will expect microchips, rabies vaccines up to date, other vaccines up to date, and a rabies teacher test. Just that seems to be the standard.
And I've heard of this thing like a pet passport. I've never moved a pet abroad. Is that something that where you keep all of your documentation, or is it all in the microchip?
No, it's all in a passport. It's a little passport. So Petal has a passport. The cats have a passport. So
wow.
So all the little stickers that they take off the vials go in there. They must be stamped. They must be signed. They must be dated every single time.
And you moved into Oman with one dog, and I think you're planning a one-day exit with more than just one dog, right?
I've rescued 2 cats, maybe 3. So I now have 4 animals that will be. And and I think the biggest thing is just be conscious of how expensive it is, And I really emphasize that, if you are not willing to pay the money and put the time and take an animal with you, don't take one. Don't bring one in. And it's not cheap. It's certainly more expensive almost for animals to travel than us. So that's the reality.
Definitely. Well, speaking of the prices, some people would say that it's cheaper to figure it all out by yourself. But then the other side is, if I pay more for a pet relocation service, at least they do all of the work for me and I know my ducks are in a row. Did you ever do a pet relocation service, or did you always do it by yourself? No,
the one from Sudan I did by myself because there was really no pet relocation in Sudan at all. So I really had to do it by myself. With Switzerland, because I was taking the animal into New Zealand, I had to have a pet export relocation. And then from Bangkok, from Thailand to Oman, I had a pet relocation. And they do take away the stress. They're not that much more expensive, but they do take away the stress of, because it's very time consuming. It's very time consuming, the paperwork, and it's very bureaucratic, and it's a lot of time waiting in office. It's not easy. So it is cheaper probably if you can do it yourself. And I know people who do it themselves, but it's also easier to get things wrong. And I know of several people who have missed things and their animals have been stuck because they've missed something. And so sometimes it is easier to use a pet relocator.
So what has been the actual travel experience as far as you know it for your pets, on these long international flights, or maybe going through hubs where the weather is really different for them, do you have how is Petal when you've picked her up, or this kind of experience?
So they're it's a very stressful time for them. And you cannot sedate animals anymore. Airlines will not allow you to sedate them. And it is very, very stressful. And so you can buy things like calming sprays and calming spot on and calming collars, and they help. They definitely help. But, I was still in immigration and I could hear Petal barking at the carousel. She came to the carousel way before I got through immigration. But they do. It is stressful for them. I don't think I would be lying if I didn't say it wasn't stressful for them. And it takes some time for them to settle into a new place. It probably takes a few weeks for them to settle completely into a new place. But on the other hand, they're really happy to see you at the other side. They just Petal was crazy happy to see me on the other side. So,
I can imagine how that little tail just went and went.
Yeah, so there is a joy of that at the end of the day, they're with you, and as soon as they see you, they're happy with you. So, for some animals it's more stressful than others, but I think there's an element of stress for all animals to do so, to go on those flights.
Would you advise anything for our listeners who are considering traveling with their pets to help the pet, get comfortable with the idea of traveling? We've heard of crate training before, and you just mentioned sprays. What have you done?
So basically, I've always done crate training. Petal's crate. I bought Petal's crate quite a bit beforehand. So again, 6 months before, I would be having a crate. and start feeding them in the crate, putting their treats in the crate and things like that. And over time, over a period of months, they do get used to it. Petal would start going into the crate by herself and just sitting in it. So yeah, that's a big thing. One thing to know about crate is that there are special measurements. Like, don't go into a shop and just think, oh, this looks big enough, because it might not be. And I've literally had animals get denied on a plane because they didn't measure the crate high enough. So you must measure the dog, and these again are on the will be on all the airline websites that you book them on. So all the airlines who take animals will have a page of what they expect for the travel, and there's special measurements you need to do, and then you put it into the actual kennel calculator or the crate calculator online, and that will give you the proper crate size. And I would highly recommend you use it, because the airline will decline your dog or your cat if the crate isn't big enough. They need to be able to stand up. They mustn't be able to touch the top. They need to be able to turn around comfortably in the crate. So you might look at a crate and go, that's just ridiculously too big, but that's probably the size they need. So,
wow. Yep. Did you get denied because of it?
Well, I had bought my crate so far in advance, like I think a year in advance, or maybe a little less, but my cat just got fatter and fatter. And he was the right size. I measured it so many times, but then after I'd already been here for a month, my friend brought them to the airport and they said, nope, he's too big. And so they had to buy a bigger crate.
Yeah, I've had friends do that here in Oman as well. Last June, she was lucky she had a bigger dog that was leaving after the smaller dog, and so she was able to give the big dog's crate. And that was an emergency run at midnight to get that to get great, and then they missed the flight. So the dog missed the flight, so she had to pay for another flight. And it was really lucky she had a 23-hour stopover. The dog had a 23-hour stopover in Qatar, so she was able to catch the initial flight that she had booked. So it becomes very expensive if you get things wrong, because you do lose your places on the flight and you have to rebook your flights. There's not a lot of sympathy.
I can imagine that they don't accept like more than 2 dogs on a flight, or more than 5. They don't fill the whole cargo.
Depending how many dogs, which airline. When we send dogs to Prague, we've got 5 dogs and a cat. So per person, it'll be per person. Each airline is, like, if you remember Liz leaving Prem with 4 dogs, I think. So an airline might say 5 dogs per person. Another airline might just say 2 dogs per person. Some countries might only say 2 dogs per person. So these are the things that you have to be really aware of. How many animals can I take into a country?
Can you give us just a ballpark? How much does it cost to send, or not send, but to fly with your pet?
Well, here's an example just in terms of if you go excess baggage, because excess baggage and cargo. So if you go excess baggage, you're probably looking, depending on, say, a medium-sized dog in a crate that's about 15 kilos. If it's plus the dog plus the crate, you're probably looking at about $600 just for the flight. Okay? And then you're probably looking at about $250 for the rabies test. The microchip is a little bit cheaper, maybe $20, $30, depending where you go. So $600 is and the rabies test are the big ones. So you could be looking at $800 to $1,000 if you go excess baggage. And you can only go excess baggage if you travel with the dog.
Right.
Okay, so if you can't go, you get a travel buddy. So that's what we do to get the animal when we're sending dogs to, because I work with an organization that sends dogs to Prague to be adopted out. So we need a travel buddy, and we can have 5 dogs per travel buddy. But if you need to go cargo, and there are countries like Australia and New Zealand who you have to go cargo, there isn't a choice to go excess baggage, because they go straight to customs and straight to quarantine. So you also have to look at, does the country need that you're going to, does it have to do quarantine? I believe in the US they do 1 day of quarantine. In New Zealand, but you can pick them up. They can go as excess baggage, but they get taken to quarantine for 1 day from the baggage carousel. In New Zealand, they go straight to customs. We don't see the animals for 10 days. So, and I think it's about, you'd be looking, depending where you're flying, but of 3,000 to 5,000 US dollars, 6,000 per animal if you have to do cargo. So there's a significant difference in the cost of cargo to being able to take them as excess baggage. And that will depend on the country that you're importing into.
From your experience talking to different friends in the realm and doing this, which do seem like the toughest countries to either get out of?
The UK is becoming very, very hard to get into. Well, no, it's not impossible. No, it's not hard. It's just complicated. So when I don't like to use the word hard because you'll get them in, it's just a lot more complicated and a lot more. New Zealand, Australia, countries like the EU is relatively easy. The States is relatively easy. Countries like Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, from my experience, they are some of the more complicated and more process-based and probably more expensive countries.
Do you have any small tips or tricks, that only come from all of the experiences that you have had that you would like to share with someone who's planning on moving with their animal?
Just be aware of the costs. I think always be aware of the costs. And as you say, little things like crate training your animal before they have to go in, know your dog's stress levels. And if there's those little things like calming sprays on their beds, calming sprays on the kennels, odd collars, anything that can keep them as calm as possible. And they do work. For me, I experienced that they do work. Maybe they don't work on all dogs, but not everything works for everyone. And just give yourself, you should be researching this. I start researching as soon as I move into a country, thinking about, as soon as I know where I'm going, I start researching. Or if I'm interested in moving to different countries and I have an animal and I'm starting to apply for jobs, look at if you've got an animal, look at those countries right from the beginning, right from very early on. I think that's all I can say, and just be aware that it costs. So, when it's expensive. So
yeah, for sure.
They're your family though,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I mean, both of you, I know. And I think the same thing that you did the very first time, if I'm not mistaken, you did leave two lovely, like you had bulldogs, or was it pit bulls that you left with a friend?
Yes, I did. I had two French bulldogs in New Zealand, and I wanted to take them with me, and I accepted a job, and I didn't research enough, and it was impossible to take French bulldogs on a plane to Thailand. So I ended up having to rehome them, but luckily with my best friends in the world, so I got to go home and spend time with them and see them, and I get photos and all the rest of it. So that helped, but that was pretty devastating. And I think for me after that, the big thing was really do your research before you go.
Because I know when we were in Thailand, you were often showing pictures of them, back there with friends. And that was our story too. When we first moved to China, we had pets here. My son had a pet in the Czech Republic. And when we moved on to China, we knew we didn't want to bring that kind of dog. It was a large breed dog. It had been an outside garden dog kind of thing. We weren't going to bring it to apartment living in China. I think that's another thing I would say, think about the type of life that your pet will have on the other end, you're going for beach walks with Petal right now, but she was a jungle dog when we knew her, right? So
I know, yes, you research where you're going and how animal friendly it is, especially dogs. A friend of mine just moved to Kazakhstan and is moving her dog to France because it's just not an animal. It's not dog friendly at all. And she struggled. For Oman, it's about 5 months of the year. Petal can get out and about and do things. But for 6 months of the year, we're inside. It's 45 degrees, She can't be outside. It's too hot on the footpath. So we have to do different things with her. Again, Oman's not super animal friendly, but Petal's a little bit older now, so she's more settled and doesn't need so much attention, so much exercise. But yeah, that research the country in terms of how dog friendly it is. Are there places to be able to walk your dog? And especially dogs, I think, more so.
So after all these moves, would you say that bringing pets with you, like, was worth the effort, and why?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think 100% my life, my life wouldn't be the same without my pets, At a place like Oman, it's hot for 6 months of the year. You're indoors. So, it's when I'm at home and come home, they're my little family and they're all waiting at the door. We're in the Middle East. And as you know, right now, we're having some conflict. There's some challenges here at the moment. And this is the one thing I think right now that I'm thinking about already is what are my contingency plans when you do, in the very, very rare case as happening with people across the Middle East in terms of your pets, you have to think of what's my worst case scenario, which some people unfortunately have had to be thinking about in the last few weeks. So,
yeah, I understand. Mary Ann, as we bring this to a close, we have one final question for you. After all of these moves, all of these years of moving pets internationally, do you have one just crazy story that you could share with us? A moment maybe where, I don't know, something went well or something went very wrong and you were just thinking.
I do have this really funny story. So in Sudan, I was moving my cat, but my neighbours, these two young UK girls, were moving their cats and didn't quite listen to me about the process. So when they went to fly out, they took the animals to the airport. Of course, they were declined because they just didn't have everything that they needed to do. So we decided, my friend Margaret and I, they called us. So we went down to the airport and we picked up the cats and we brought them back for a month. And then we did all the paperwork for them because luckily I was moving my cat to Switzerland and I had to stay in Sudan over the summer. But was so funny. So when we finally got them all booked on, we managed to find people to help us. We got them booked on a month later. But we were sitting in the airport and I'll never forget this. The guy in Emirates, he looked at me and he said, "What does the temperature need to be in the hold?" And I was like, I don't know. My friend Margaret's, I know, it's the funniest thing. I was like, I don't know. Should you not know that? Or
I don't know. You tell me. Above freezing, please.
So my friend Margaret gets on the phone and looks on the internet and is like, oh, it should be between 15 and 18 degrees or something in the hold.
Centigrade, folks, centigrade for all of our Fahrenheit listeners.
I know, but that was a really crazy experience for me, in terms of being asked what should the temperature be as we take these animals. So, I'll never forget that. But, so...
No doubt.
That's pretty funny.
And when you've lived in other countries and you've gone away for the summer holidays or you've gone away for Christmas vacation and stuff, what have been some of the challenges around either finding someone to take your pets or to use pet services in the country? Have you had difficulty with that in the past?
No, not generally, but again, it's not cheap. Mm-hmm. So in Switzerland, it was very expensive because she went to boarding. She would go to boarding. The cat would go to boarding. In Thailand, we know that we were a little bit lucky. She was the school dog, so the school paid for the boarding costs. But here in Oman, I have the option of my housekeeper who works with me full time. Who works with me. She can stay here at nighttime, of course, and stay here. Or there are lovely boarding facilities which are reasonably priced in Oman as well. So, that's another thing to be looking at is what can I do with my animals when I'm going on holiday? So it's really research, and that's a really good question to think about. What are you going to do with your animals as an international teacher when you have all your holidays? So before you go to the country, this is something that you need to research as part of taking your animal.
Awesome. Yeah. I was just thinking, because I know Christmas holiday, you have to think one extra thing than the rest of us who just get to pack up and go for the weekend and stuff. So I remember those kind of issues with it. So Mary Ann, thank you so much for your time today, for hooking up with us and giving so much richness to our listeners. We have this last little thing we'd like to end with, a little rapid fire kind of thing. So we're going to just give you a topic or ask a quick question. And then what's the first answer that comes to your mind when we say this? Okay.
Yeah, are you ready? Best airline experience that you've had traveling with pets?
Oman Air.
Okay. Nice. Okay. One thing you always pack in your pet's travel crate that people might not think about.
Sellotape. Because when I take it to the airport.
Okay.
They're not allowed anything in the, of course, food and stuff like that. But take sellotape because you need to be able to sellotape the bag and the paperwork onto their crates.
Good advice.
Very
okay.
Good advice. Wow.
Okay. Biggest mistake people make when they are relocating pets internationally?
They don't do enough research.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And finally, if someone listening today is preparing their very first move internationally, their first pet move, what's the one thing you would tell them to start doing today?
Get onto use social media because these wonderful Facebook pages or whatever pages, but definitely Facebook pages of pets and moving to Singapore, moving to these different countries, and people will answer those questions as a starting point.
Love that.
Amazing. So helpful. Yeah. I know there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people who listen to this and say, thank you, Mary Ann.
Yeah,
We're two of them.
Yeah. We're definitely we've got a companion episode with this one that we just want to really start to give people the right answers or at least point them in the right direction to receive these questions.
Yeah, you're right. Because every single country is different. Every single airline is different. Every single importing process could be different. Every single exporting process could be different. So doing the research, and it's all there. Everything's online. Yep. Either the airlines, the countries, vets. There's so many people out there that you can write to that will give you advice.
I love it. You are the evidence that you can do it, even though it's complicated. It can be done.
Yep. And you help others do it too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's absolutely worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So we're so excited that you've also shared all these pictures of Petal and your pets that we've been putting up in this episode. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Have a great night, Mary Ann.
Bye. Thanks, guys. All right. See you. Bye.
We'd like to thank our Mary Ann once again for joining us today and sharing her experiences from more than 2 decades in international education and the very real stories of what it looks like to move pets around the world while building a career abroad.
Yeah, hearing from someone who has definitely navigated these moves across the Middle East, across Africa, Southeast Asia, and to Europe, really highlights that relocating pets internationally is totally possible, but it takes careful planning, patience, and a willingness to learn as you go along.
Definitely. And hopefully today's conversation gave you a more realistic picture of what that process can look like. The paperwork, the travel logistics, the unexpected moments, and the lessons that only come with experience.
Yeah. So if you're considering moving or relocating your pet internationally, we'll be linking a lot of helpful resources in the show notes, including some governmental travel guidelines, airline standards, organizations that specialize in pet relocation. Remember, every country is specific, so these are just some tips to help you out.
Yeah. And if you're planning your next international move, whether it involves pets or contracts, or maybe just navigating the broader logistics of working abroad, we would love to invite you to head over to our website at connectedglobal.org.
There you're going to find a growing collection of resources and international ideas for families and educators, including teacher guides, contract checklists, country insights. We've been creating so much.
Yes, definitely. And remember, once you're over there at connectedglobal.org, you can always book a consultation with us as well, whether you're a teacher preparing for your next international move, or maybe you're a leader supporting educators relocating to your school, or maybe you're just someone trying to make sense of many moves abroad and all the pieces that go along with it.
So if you've enjoyed today's conversation, help support the work we do by sharing this episode with a colleague, leaving a comment down below, or please subscribing so you don't miss any future episodes.
So until next time,
may your international journeys be thoughtful,
your planning be smooth,
and your furry friends be happy
and international.
Don't hang up.
Oh!
She left us.
No!
Come back. So now we call her.
Sorry. It's fine.
It's cute. It's new. It's new.
Okay.
We gotta keep the fans guessing, Randy.
Sorry for cutting you off.
It's all good.
You were really in tune to my sound.
I cannot.